And I'm not saying that based on my opinion. I've spent the last 8 years interviewing 50 of the smartest people in the financial business, the Warren Buffetts, the Ray Dalios, the Carl Icahns, and saying, is it really winnable? And then they showed me, yes, but there are caveats. And one of the biggest caveats is you hear all this argument about socialism versus capitalism. You look at our society, why is that happening? 60% of Americans don't even have $1,000 saved for retirement. 40% say if they had an emergency and needed $400, they couldn't raise it. How is that possible in the greatest economy in the world? Because we're taught to become consumers, not owners. And so the first step, obviously, is understanding that you're not going to earn your way to a fortune. Even people that do that don't usually keep it. You got to make money while you sleep. And the only way to do that is understand compounding. So if a child is a young person, 19, 20 years old, puts aside $50 a week, they put it in the market over historical returns, it's $2.2 million. But you might say, I'm not 19. So we created a chart here for you, if you want to throw it up, that you should know what your number is. If you're 20, you need $3,000 a year. If you're 40, you need $15,000 a year. If you're 50, you got to put away $37,000 a year to have $1 million at a 7% return. So what I really want to do in this book was give people an unshakable feeling that no matter how much volatility there is, there are truths about the market you have to know, and they don't vary. And if you understand those, that's the people that win the game. But they become owners, they become capitalists.
So that's so interesting. One of the things you said in there is something we actually hear about quite a bit. And people will say, well, how do you know you're going to get 7%?
Yes.
And they hear people come on and talk about how they think returns from now on in the stock market might only be 2 or 3%, or they look at charts about how we've gone up so much since the lows, and they say, Tony, how do I know I'm going to get 7%? What have you learned from speaking with investors?
Well, what you can look at is look at history. If you look at the history, for example, you see in the last 36 years, say 1980, say to 2015. If you look at the studies there, you'll find something really interesting. We've made money in the markets. We've had a variance of 14% per year. I'm sure you remember 2 years ago we had the worst January. This year we had the best January, right? But we lose 14% inter-year. But we make money 77% of the time. 28 out of those 36 years, it's made money. We're up 300% on the Dow since 2009, yet so many people on the sideline because they hear all these stories and because they listen.
Especially now, they think, well, Tony, 300%, why would I get in now? I'm going to get in at the peak and I'm going to get hit all over.
You've got to ask yourself, are we going to continue to grow as an economy? Do you think 5 years from now it's going to cost more for a burger? Do you think it's going to cost more for your internet service? Do you think it's going to cost? The answer is yes. There's going to be inflation. Are we going to have a growing economy? When you talk to the people who are in charge, if you talk to the Warren Buffetts, they'd say the worst bet you can make is to bet against the United States economy. Will we have corrections? Will we have a bear market? Of course we will. Right. We have a correction every year on average since 1900. But we come back. We've had a bear market every 3 to 5 years. That's what's screwing us up. It's been 10 years, the biggest bull market here, and people just aren't used to volatility. But if you look at the reality and you see how things really function, I'll give you an example. In the last 20 years, the S&P is up 8.2%. If you were out of the market because you're trying to time it, saying, oh, I think it's the wrong time, just 10 days, the 10 best trading days, you made 4.5%. Wow. If you're out 20 days in 20 years, you made 2%, 2.1. If you're out 30 days, you lost money. And here's the crazy part. 6 of the 10 best trading days in 20 years are within 2 weeks of the worst trading days when most people are saying, why would I get in now? There's going to be a correction. You want to take advantage of when those things occur.
People get so hung up on what will the returns be. But, I mean, the things that people can actually control, they're not controlling. And this is your tip number 2. Eliminate excessive fees and taxes. This is something people could do right now.
Yeah. Jack Bogle was a mentor of mine and a dear friend, and God rest his soul, beautiful man. And he used to say, the only thing you get in investing is what you don't pay for, right? And he said, the average person doesn't know that 1% more in fees than you should be paying is 10 years because of compounding of fees, 10 years of retirement income you gave up. So you could have 2 people that are paying supposedly the same amount of money, but they're not. They're buying the same product, like 401ks. 71%, most Americans have their money in a 401k. 71% of Americans think they're paying no fees on the 401k because for 30 years, the industry didn't have to tell you what they were charging you. Now they do, and how they cover that is a 30-page document. You have to have a PhD to understand. But here's what you need to understand. If you're paying 1% versus 3%, let's say you're 35 years old, and you put $100,000 in the market and you leave it there, and then you get an 8% return over time, right? If that person who paid 1% in fees will have $761,000 at 65. The person who had 3% of fees owned the same stock, same S&P. And they're going to have almost half as much money, $432,000.
But that's
the difference of fees. So when you hear 1%, you don't realize what it means. And in the book, I walk and show you there's 13 hidden fees that most people have no clue about. And they wonder, why am I not growing up at the same level as the market?
It's fascinating. The interesting thing that leads right into your next tip, which is to find a fiduciary advisor. A lot of people will say, well, wait a minute. You just told me to push all the way down on my fees in the market. Why should I then pay somebody for help with this instead of just putting all of my money into the market directly?
Well, you've got to put it through somebody anyway in some cases, and most people are going through a broker, let's be honest. And brokers are great people. I have no derogatory thing about a broker. They bust their tail. but they're in a system where they're being needed to sell what's best for the company. These companies are bad companies. They're taking care of shareholders. That's what they've been taught to do. But they're not giving you the best deal. So you need somebody who's legally required to put you ahead of themselves. And the only person to do that is a fiduciary. It's a good F word. It's a good one to remember. But here's what's crazy. 310,000 financial professionals, wealth analysts, wealth advisors, special wealth advisors.
So many different confusing things.
Yeah, but 90% of them are brokers. Of the 310,000 in this country, only 31,000 are RIAs, registered investment advisors, fiduciaries. And out of them, only 5,000 aren't duly registered, meaning they say they're fiduciary, but then they switch hats. And legally, it's a great part of the law. Now they can make a broker and sell you.
You gotta ask. You have to ask.
You gotta
right?
know. You gotta know.
Tip number 4, understand how the markets work. Avoid behavioral mistake. Is that like what we were talking about before?
It was, but I'd add one piece to it, which is if you're trying to time, JP Morgan did a great study and they said, let's take a group of people. Let's say somebody got in on the best day possible. The market crashed the next morning. It's on its way up and they had perfect timing. Somebody got on the worst day, the night before the market crashes. Somebody did dollar cost averaging or somebody just put all their money in. When they did it over a 20-year period of time, the difference between the person who had the worst day and got on the best day was $7,000 over that time period. You want to be in. The biggest mistake is not be in the market. And I just want to say one other thing. Unshakable, it's the #1 New York Times bestseller. You can go get it for $14.95 on Amazon, but I also bought a bunch. I just want people to have it. I donate 100% of the profits to Feeding America. We fed 420 million meals in the last 4 years. With that, plus what I've added, we're going to feed 1 billion people over the next 10 years, 5 years in total. Be 10 and 10-year total. But if you want to, you can also go to unshakable.com, and I'll give it to you for shipping and handling. I just want people to get it. I want people to become financially literate because we're living in the greatest time in history, and most people aren't taking advantage of it. It's crazy.